Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we have one last segment. That particular segment is at the behest of myself. We have with us today Chancellor Wayne Davis, University of Tennessee, Knoxville. I ask for this particular segment on today's agenda, ladies and gentlemen, because I had an opportunity on a couple of occasions to visit the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. Like you, I have heard a great deal about the culture at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. I had a number of preconceived notions about that culture, and I gladly say today that I was positively wrong in a great deal of those of my preconceived notions. I had, and I, like you, I suspicion there are some things that have occurred at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville that I don't agree with. However, ladies and gentlemen, there are a number of exceptionally positive things that are occurring at the state's flagship university that I am exceptionally proud of. And in the spirit of fair play, I felt like if we were to discuss the things that we disagreed with, we certainly needed to focus on the things, the positive things that are occurring. I had an opportunity to visit campus and interact with some young people, some of the most respectful, well-mannered young people I've ever seen. Had an opportunity to attend a commencement ceremony for the College of Arts and Sciences, class of 2018. Approximately 1,000 students. And having participated in several commencement ceremonies myself in the past, I saw one of the most well-arranged, well-planned, well-executed commencement ceremonies I've ever attended. It involved 1,000 graduates. At the end of the commencement ceremony, I sat next to a lieutenant colonel, U.S. Army lieutenant colonel. He assumed the podium and marched a detail of young to-be commissioned officers on the stage at the University of Tennessee. He asked them, gave them the order of right face, and asked them to repeat the oath after him, which swore them in and commissioned them as lieutenants or junior grade officers in one branch or the other of the United States military. And as soon as he could finish, the graduating class of 2018 of the College of Arts and Sciences gave that detail of newly commissioned officers a resounding standing ovation. Unrehearsed, unprompted, gave their classmates who had just been inducted into the United States military a resounding standing ovation. And as an old soldier, I was quite impressed with that. You know, and I know, or I suspicion, that same culture does not exist in some of the post-secondary institutions in our great nation. I had an opportunity to visit after the commencement ceremony with a friend of mine, Dr. Dean Lee, Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences, and I asked some questions that were of concern to me. I asked about the average ACT score. This incoming class, the average ACT score, ladies and gentlemen, is 28. That's almost as good as my ACT score times 2. Ladies and gentlemen, I asked things about student debt, and my friend alluded to that just a little earlier at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. 50% of the youngsters leave the state's flagship institution with zero debt. The average debt for those who do leave with debt is less than the price, the window sticker of the 5-year-old four-wheel drive Ford pickup that I looked at the other day. Needless to say, my preconceived notions about the culture at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, have been exploded. And I am proud to say that and share that with you. And as a hero of mine, Paul Harvey once said on many occasions, I felt like, in the spirit of fair play, we needed to hear the rest of the story. Chairman Brooks, you had asked for permission to speak.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So many times we allow the media to set our total image on an institution of higher learning. And I think what Dr. Fogarty is trying to say is that in the mix of all that there is, and we've dealt with issues on these committees of all different kinds. I mean, if it's made the front page of a paper somewhere, it'll wound up on the agenda in front of one of these committees. And I think it's important to point out that the handout that you have is very revealing about the quality of students that are admitted academically. And I think Doc very vividly described the quality of students that were graduating. So in between, there was a number of opportunities, and many of these students wound up, recognizing these young men and women that went in the military in a very phenomenal kind of way. And he, like he says, there are some universities in this country that won't even allow that, one, to occur, two, won't allow the ROTC program, and three, make no mention of it. In fact, they persuade just the opposite. Do not go in the military. And it's an official position from university. But we encourage all the members to take note of these notes that are being handed out to you and reflect upon those in reference to what's happening at the flagship institution. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Chairman Brooks. Mr. Chancellor, welcome, sir.
Thank you, Chairman Fogarty, and also Chairman Brooks and other chairmen and representatives. I'm really glad to be here, and I was really thrilled with the idea that I would be able to come and talk to you about some of the really neat things that are going on our campus. Like you, however, I have attended 10 of the last spring commencements. Our College of Engineering, I was Dean of the College of Engineering before I became Interim Chancellor, and we had those same induction ceremonies and those same standing ovations, and I can assure you, if you haven't been to one of those ceremonies and been through that and watched that like Chairman Fogarty has, you should go. Because if you want to feel chills, go through that ceremony and watch those young men and women. So thank you for sharing that with us. It is an awesome ending of for a beginning called commencement. So with that, first of all, let me say that I'm going to try to share with you some good things. I did put them into slides. I don't believe you have those in front of you. They are over to my right or to your left on the screen here. But I will try to talk a little bit about them because I think that you're going to be challenged to try to see that from where you're sitting. But I do like, I was a dean of engineering before I became an interim chancellor. And in all honesty, I love things generally that go from left to right and they go upward as you go from left to right, because that's generally you're presenting good information. This graph happens to, and you can just see the trend of it without reading the numbers. This graph happens to show our undergraduate student population for the last several years. It's been relatively stable for the last 20 or so years in terms of undergraduate freshman admission. However, we are in a growth plan for a 15% growth in undergraduate students over the next 5 years, starting last year. I am really pleased to share with you the fact that we have almost 5,200 first-time entering freshmen this year, which is 5.6% higher than last year's. And the previous year was about 1.5%. But those 2 years represent a change in the direction of the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, because we hadn't really grown in overall undergraduate enrollment for the last 20 or so years. And I've been there 47 years, so I've watched the growth of the university. I watched it grow to 31,000 students. I watched it grow back down to 26,000, and now we're at about 28,800. So I've seen that transition during my career at the University of Tennessee. What's really exciting about that growth is, and you mentioned it, Chairman Fogarty, I believe, or Chairman Brooks, I can't remember which said it, but the average entering freshman GPA from their high school is 3.96. As a university-wide average, that average ACT score is about 28. It's just right at 28 this coming freshman year. Those are exciting. They're the highest it's ever been. I can remember as a dean of engineering when engineering's average entering freshman was 4.0 and the university's was 3.7. But in the period of the last 8 years, the entire university has grown to where that average is about a 4.0 high school GPA. Now, there's an obvious range there. That's just an average. So, but it does indicate an increasing quality of student as well as an increasing number of students, and we're very proud of that. In terms of graduates, I did check. I didn't include it in a slide, but last year we had 7,055 students that graduated from the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. That was almost 5,000 undergraduate students, of which arts and sciences was about 1,000. They're the largest college by far within the university. We had 1,500 master's students that graduated, and we had almost 600 PhD students that graduated from the university. So those are all really good signs of trends that are on an upward trajectory. Other good news about where we are at the present time, and you can see the 85. I made that number big enough where you could read it. We had 18,500 students who applied to UT this year as potential entering freshmen. Of those 18,400, 15,800, almost 16,000 were admitted. In other words, we admitted, and that number, the first number you see on the screen there, 85%. Of those students that applied to the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, 85% were admitted, which means we are providing phenomenal access to students who apply to the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. 29% of those students are Pell eligible, which means they qualify for Pell grants, the federal government loans. And mentioned earlier by Mr. Cimino, 25% of our households of those students that applied this year make less than $50,000 a year. So we're providing not only access to an increasingly larger number of students, we're also providing access to a lot of students whose parents have an income that is, almost is classified basically at the poverty level or below that poverty level income. So we're really excited about those aspects. Very busy graph. I'll talk about the graph. Let's talk about retention and 6-year graduation rates, because as a large land-grant university, one of our key aspects is, are we retaining those freshmen, or do they come in and we somehow aren't getting them through the system? Well, in the case of UT, we do have a Vol Vision 2020, and our goal over that 5-year period when we started that was to achieve about a 90% first-year retention. The first graph on the left that you see on the slide there, we are currently at 87%, but we've gone from 84% to 87% in 4 years. And so we are well on our way to achieving that 90% first-year retention. Because those are, if you think about efficiency, it's far more efficient to retain a good student than to have them walk out of the university after 1 year and then have to provide a scholarship to another student to maintain that growth. So we're very committed to that. We have wonderful programs in the first year to flag early students that have a challenge. If you come into the University of Tennessee today and you take your first exam and you fail it, that faculty member automatically notifies student services to meet with that student to try to do an early intervention. Why are you not making the grade in that class? And that's working for us. So it's a beautiful, beautiful program to increase retention. On the other side, the second graph shows our gradual increase in the 6-year, what we call 6-year graduation rate. As many of you know, most students don't get through in 4 years, but we standardize across the state on a 6-year graduation rate. Our current 6-year graduation rate is 72%, but that's increased in the last 10 years from 60% to 72%. That's major progress. And based on our 4-year graduation rate, which we just received this past year, we know that our 72% 6-year graduation rate next year is going to be even higher. So we are trying really hard. By the way, that means less students. If you think about it, if we retain a student, that's another student in our system. If we graduate them, that's one less student in our system. So there's a counterbalance here between increasing retention and also simultaneously increasing the graduation rate. So we're very excited about these programs. And they're all moving in the right direction. I mean, we have a lot of staff and a lot of faculty really devoted to increasing access. Because we're growing in undergraduate students in a fairly consistent 5 to 6% increase right now, we did just this past year initiate a program to actually hire an additional 100 faculty over the next 5 years. That 100 faculty will be contingent upon our continuing to increase the undergraduate student population, because the tuition that they pay is partially how we fund that increase in faculty. But to give you an example of where we are in the implementation, excuse me, this coming fall we have 86 searches for faculty replacements. Some of those are people who retired, people that might have gone to another university. But in these large numbers that you see there, we have 86 searches, but 19 of those are brand new faculty lines, new positions, never at the university, because we are in that growth mode of students as well as growth mode in faculty. We also have 3 additional faculty that are being hired in what we call thematic areas, because we've decided across the colleges that we need to concentrate on such things as what's coming down the road that's going to be something that we don't currently offer, that students need to really learn about, such things as quantum computing, data science or big data, things that are all on the minds of you as business people, because these are things that are coming. So we are adding in thematic areas as well as what we would call our standard disciplines. Our rankings as a university are increasing. Overall, UT is currently ranked 46th among publics, but we have a number of colleges and departments, such as the Tickle College of Engineering's 34th ranked undergraduate. It just broke through 30th ranked. It's now 29th ranked at the graduate level, which is an all-time high ranking for the College of Engineering. College of Business is now 27th as an overall college at the undergraduate level. We also have areas within colleges that are now highly nationally ranked. For example, that's supply chain management in the College of Business, second in the nation among publics. Nuclear engineering in College of Engineering, 7th in the nation among public universities. And many others that I won't get into the details. I could talk all day, because these are the kind of things that excite me as a previous dean as well as a chancellor. But the point is, we are moving forward because the quality of the university is continuously moving forward, and we are beginning to move through the ranks of those national universities that we are always competing with. Another outstanding Record, and this one I need to stop and explain. This one, the title on this one says record $204 million in research expenditures. Now I need to stop in a moment and talk about what does a research expenditure mean, because it's not what you think about as being an expenditure. Expenditures from your perspective generally would be what did it cost us to do something. In this context, this is a federal term. This is how many dollars did we spend this past year based on getting contracts from federal agencies, from corporations, from state agencies, where we brought in an externally funded research contract that we then spent those funds within those contracts. So this is actually a revenue stream for the university because, quite frankly, that $204 million is how we support the vast majority of the graduate students at the University of Tennessee. All of those students that are on research assistantships who have a stipend plus a tuition waiver are funded off of an externally funded research contract. For us, this past year was $204 million at combination of UT Knoxville and the UT Institute of Agriculture. Mostly the Knoxville campus because we're a lot larger than the Institute of Agriculture. But a phenomenal program. And if it weren't for that program, we wouldn't have a robust graduate program at the University of Tennessee. But because of those federally available grants, Department of Energy, National Institute of Health, other agencies, other corporations, we're bringing in funding that helps the bottom line for the University of Tennessee. One example of that was we're moving more into Department of Defense funding. One of our faculty members, Suresh Babu, shown here on the left, just received a very large grant from the U.S. Department of Navy to develop better alloys for submarines and shipping vessels. You got a lot of corrosion when you're in the ocean. You got a lot of material fatigue. It's a mega contract for us to help develop better materials that helps the U.S. Navy, and it'll help the Air Force and others as well. So we're very excited about that. We even had one of our faculty members, I won't go into the details, but who convincingly identified the fact that Amelia Earhart's bones were indeed found some number of years ago, and that it was indeed Amelia Earhart, because they're doing research on bone density, bone size, et cetera, and they were able to match medical records with those remains that were found and convince the scientific community that they had indeed found Amelia Earhart. Another exciting area, I mentioned all those research expenditures that we're getting from federal agencies where we can, on contracts. That translates even into our undergraduate programs. 5 years ago, we had 456 undergraduate students out of about 22,000 who participated in an undergraduate research program. Today, this year, we increased that by 50%. It's currently at 2,205 of our 22,000 students, almost 10% of our undergraduate students, engaged in research. Not funded by the state of Tennessee or by the university, but by external research grants that faculty get to help create research opportunities for undergraduates. That's an amazing increase for us. It's over 10% of our undergraduate students that are now actively engaged in those research programs. From a development standpoint, we had a record year. This is the best fundraising year on record for the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. We're right in the middle of a $1.1 billion campaign, which we are now at the 1 billion mark on the 1.1 billion, so we're 10% away from our goal. But this year we had $235 million that was generated by a combination of some 46,000 donors, of which about half of those, about 23,000, were actually UT alumni, some of you in the room. Average gift's $100 of those 46,000, but collectively it's $235 million. Now that's not money we can spend on an annual basis. Much of that $235 million is placed in an endowment that generates about 4.5% on an annual basis for the colleges and the units that have those endowments. But it was a phenomenal year from an endowment standpoint. Infrastructure-wise, Chris Cimino mentioned earlier, we have about $1 billion of actual either planning, designing, or construction going on the campus at this point in time. The good news is that only 16% of that actually came from the state of Tennessee. We're able to take your 16%, leverage that with donors who commit funds toward building, and of course with students that put money into the student center construction to create a mega transformation on our campus today. Final point I want to leave you with, we just did a recent study. It's actually just about to be released. I'll go ahead and share it with you. But our Center for Economic Development and Business, Bill Fox, on campus, who, by the way, do the projections for the state of Tennessee economic development, did a study for us recently. Our campus actually shows we generate about $1.7 billion in economic impact on the state of Tennessee on an annual basis. There are about 35,000 jobs, not all at UT, but that are generated as a result of UT's presence in the Knoxville area. We have about a little less than $600 million in salaries that are associated with our 10,000 employees. And we generate about $166 million in revenue for the state of Tennessee from those expenditures. And that helps counterbalance some of the investment that the state of Tennessee gives to the University of Tennessee. Because in our base budget, while we get base budget, we're also generating in return of state and local tax dollars to the state. I'm going to stop with that and ask if anyone has a question. For me, I would summarize it this way. I loved being a dean of engineering because we were really on a roll. And now that I'm the interim chancellor for this year, I find that the university is also on a roll as a whole. And that's what excites me every day. It's what keeps me going, what I get up every morning thinking about. And so thank you for the opportunity to allow us to talk about some of the good things that are happening on our campus. So.
Thank you, sir, for coming. I was particularly impressed with the number of statistics that I heard that day and did a little research myself, and the fact that the University of Tennessee Knoxville focuses on youngsters from the state of Tennessee. 89% thereabouts of the youngsters at the University of Tennessee Knoxville are from Tennessee. As opposed to our neighbors to the south, which is also a great post-secondary institution, the University of Alabama, except on the third Saturday in October, they are a great institution as well. 60% of their folk are from out of state. So that tells me a great deal that the University of Tennessee Knoxville has focused on Tennessee students, a third of which are Pell eligible based on need. And I was quite impressed with that, with a graduation rate of 72%. Like I said, in the spirit of fair play, I think it would behoove us to listen to all sides of the argument. Chairman Matlock, you're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And at times in my past, I have been on the other side with frustrations and disappointments and questions, but I can remember where I was at and what I was doing when the phone call came in that said Wayne Davis has been appointed as the interim chancellor. And I can remember telling the people there, calling me from New Sentinel, how excited I was because I have known Wayne a long time. And he and his wife have been friends and customers. And it is a thrill to see him seated in that role. And I would only hope that he would consider removing the term interim from his title and allow the university to proceed with him, because I'm, like everyone here, looking at these slides and looking at this handout, just excited about where we're going. And so I'm really, really pleased to see him before us today. And I think this committee, who hasn't yet gotten to know him as well as I have, you're going to be impressed. He is one fine individual. So welcome to you, sir, and what you're going to do for us.
Thank you, Chairman Matlock. And by the way, if I were going to remove that word interim, you'd have to talk to Sylvia. And I don't know whether you'd be successful with that or not, so.
Well, I have two sons who both have graduated from UT, and there have been times at which I wasn't too excited about that idea. But today, I think we've all seen a tremendous change with what's happened there, and it started in recent times. So thank you for what you're doing for us and what
Absolutely,
the
my
other,
pleasure.
your whole team is doing. Well done.
Thank you, Chairman Matlock. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am. We certainly do. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Chancellor, thank you so very much for coming. My compliments to you and your staff, and compliments to the folk at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Oh, Chairman White, excuse me, sir.
I just want to thank Representative Jerome Moon for hanging with us for 2 days. We're going to try to get him on the Education Committee next year, I do believe.
Thank you, Jerome. You know that when you're on one of the House Education Committees, sure, you qualify for the Combat Infantry Badge. That said, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. We are adjourned.